The White House announced this weekend President Biden will mark 20 years since the 9/11 attacks in the three locations where planes went down: the Pentagon, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and New York City. The president ordered the Justice Department Friday to declassify some of the FBI's material related to the terror attack investigation. Some family members of victims have been pushing the administration to release the material. They urged the president to skip 9/11 memorials if he didn't declassify it. Many of those family members believe the material includes more information on Saudi Arabia's links to the hijackers. 15 of the 19 were from the kingdom. The Saudi government has long denied any connection to attacks. For more, let's bring in CBS News intelligence and national security reporter Olivia Gazis. Olivia, can you tell our viewers what documents might be released?
Sure. So perhaps the most prominent set of documents at issue are the findings of something called Operation Encore, which is the name of an FBI investigation into possible Saudi government connections to the 9/11 attacks. That investigation was launched in 2007, and it focused on several Saudi nationals who may have materially assisted two of the 9/11 hijackers, who we know resided in California in the weeks before the attacks. At least one of those men, a man called Omar al-Bayoumi, has already said that he met the hijackers at a restaurant by chance, struck up a conversation, he says, and subsequently helped them lease an apartment and set up bank accounts in San Diego. Bayoumi and others were previously investigated by the 9/11 Commission, which ultimately said it did not find that he or others aided extremist groups. Since then, FBI agents who were involved with the investigation have told colleagues here at CBS News, without going into specifics, that there is some information in still classified documents that could change our understanding of how the attacks unfolded. Those are details that until now, the U.S. government has said have to stay classified in order to protect national security.
And Olivia, do we know more about why these documents have been kept secret for so long? You mentioned the national security aspect of it. Do we have any information that indicates that the situation has changed?
So it's important to note that 4 presidents have tussled with this decision, despite enormous pressure from victims and their families for more answers. Until now, the government has invoked something called state secrets privilege, which says the federal government can resist disclosing information during litigation if the disclosure of that information coming to light would harm national security. When that privilege is invoked, it's very hard to know anything about why, because a court has to evaluate the claim without forcing the disclosure of the information at issue. Critics of this decision, families in this and other cases, have said that it's an overused excuse, not being used for valid national security concerns because this happened 20 years ago, but really to obscure or conceal embarrassing or questionable conduct by the government or governments that might be involved. It really is hard to know where the truth lies in any given case until the information comes to light.
So let's get into the actual details about that information. What does President Biden's executive order require the Justice Department do now?
Sure. The executive order, which was issued Friday, requires the Department of Justice and other relevant agencies to review, declassify, and publicly release a set of these still secret government documents related to the attacks, and specifically items related to whether the hijackers had any relationship with a foreign government. The department had already started a review about a month ago, but what this really does is enforces a timetable for document releases, and it really asks agencies to err on the side of disclosure and transparency. Specifically, by September 11th, it requires the DOJ to release what appears to be that summary of the findings of Operation Encore, that FBI investigation, and then other documents would have to be released pending a review over the next 6 months. Among those could be things like internal FBI correspondence about how it decided to close down its investigation, other analytical documents, interview transcripts, all from prior investigations. For President Biden, it does mark the fulfillment of a campaign promise. He said he would do this. And it is, again, a big step because, as we said, multiple administrations have weighed and ultimately declined to release many of these documents, always citing those national security concerns.
So it isn't necessarily that all the documents are going to be released, but particularly when it comes to Operation Encore, which we know is so important to the families of 9/11 victims, we're expecting that to be forthcoming. So how have those families of victims responded?
As you can imagine, Lana, they've very much welcomed this development. They've called it a turning point and a critical first step. It does come after literally decades of pressure, and even in the past several weeks, explicit pressure on President Biden. You mentioned that, almost 1,800 survivors and victim family members sent the president a letter essentially saying he wouldn't be welcome at any 9/11 memorial events if these documents weren't declassified and released. More recently, other family members, thousands of them, signed a letter alleging FBI misconduct and potentially mishandling evidence related to the attacks, calling for an inspector general investigation. So it has been a really long and fraught process that might see some closure one way or another in the coming week and then in the next 6 months.
So, Olivia, you had mentioned the previous administration struggling with this, in part because of the U.S. relationship with Saudi Arabia. Two questions. First, a very quick one. Given that this was a campaign promise by then candidate Biden, and given that he had previously served in the Obama administration as vice president, presumably he would have already had access to know what the findings were in this. And so I'm hoping you can tell our viewers if that assumption is correct. And then given all of that, how do you expect that this might affect the U.S.-Saudi relationship moving forward?
Sure. Yeah. The answer to your first question, yes, as vice president, he would have had an awareness of this, and the Obama administration was very much confronted with this decision, as the Trump administration was. The issue has been out in the ether for a really long time, right? But it's still extraordinarily sensitive. Saudi Arabia, as you mentioned, has always denied that its government was involved, and officials there have said, there's no there to these investigations. But that's the key point of it, right? Is it would make a monumental difference if anything came out that determined that the Saudi government or high-ranking officials within the government had involvement or even real awareness of the 9/11 attacks. What's less clear is what the implication is of establishing links to individuals who were loosely or indirectly associated with the government, some suggestions of which are already out there. So the question is, do these connections go any deeper or any higher? And I think also worth noting that, these disclosures are coming at a time of really heightened counterterrorism concerns because of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Saudi Arabia has always been a key intelligence partner in the region, sharing counterterrorism information. So releasing these documents, while it would provide long-sought closure for families who have been in a lot of pain, could also really fundamentally strain relations with the kingdom, just as the U.S. needs its help to keep tabs on terrorist activity in the Middle East.
Olivia, appreciate all of the context and the details. Thank you.
Thanks, Lana.